Hello and welcome to my video. Today I'm going to be discussing the first article of the Great Decisions book, which is The Waning of Pax Americana. So this article first starts off by describing what a pax is and what paxes have preceded Pax Americana. So in general, a pax is a state of peace, but this article says that more specifically, it is a secure and stable political and economic order backed by the principles of the prevailing military power. So in other words, this is a time where worldwide there is peace, and that peace follows the morals, the standards, in general, the strategies of the most powerful military at that time. Hence, Pax Americana generally follows these things of the United States of America. So prior periods like this include Pax Romana, Pax Mongolica, Pax Ottomana, and Pax Britannica. And so if you can't tell already, they're like Pax Romana follows Rome. Pax Mongolica follows Mongolia. Pax Britannica follows Great Britain. So Pax Americana first began at the end of the Civil War. And it first just represented the peace that was just within the United States. But eventually, this peace spread across the world. So after World War II, many, many nations were in very distraught places economically and in their military. However, the United States boomed after World War II. They were very successful, so we were left in a very dominant position. This is what really put us into Pax Americana. Something unique about Pax Americana, apart that differentiates it from the other paxes of the past, is that there's no empire that's trying to rule the world or spread farther. The United States had no interest in controlling other parts of the world, just maintaining the peace and using force when necessary. So some facets of information about Pax Americana. After World War II, the relations with the Soviet Union did become more complicated. They were not, their ideals did not align with those of Pax Americana, which made this relationship quite tense. The British Prime Minister at the time, Winston Churchill, suggested the classic metaphorical Iron Curtain that should be placed between the East and the West. And then following this, we go into the Cold War between Soviet Union and the United States. And this was interesting to Pax Americana because in one aspect, it provided great risk because we had two great world powers opposing each other, which could really threaten the world peace. But on the other end of the spectrum, this was beneficial to Pax Americana because it was holding each other in line per se. They couldn't act out because they knew they had a watchdog on them. The United States couldn't be acting crazy, using nuclear weapons because they knew that Russia had them too, and they were keeping the United States in line, and vice versa. And then after the collapse of the Soviet Union, a unipolar moment arose that put the U.S. in an unprecedented position of unchallenged power. The United States had no one opposing them and no one telling them what to do or what they can't do. Their power was unmatched, which was great for the United States, but could be kind of a threat to Pax Americana. Because of this power, the U.S. took on the responsibility of policing internationally, protecting human rights, advocating for democracy. Some places that they did this were Haiti, Somalia, Bosnia. So this did set some people off. And then we see that in the direct opposition to Pax Americana in the 1990s with attacks on U.S. embassies, bases, properties. The Middle East, there was a lot of resentment stirring up because of the United States kind of actions that just suggested that they can do whatever they want and that they're in control. And then, of course, the events of 9/11 really sent the U.S. into a world on terror. We were all after terrorism, and we wanted it to be stopped. This sent us into the Iraq War, which lasted from 2002 to 2011 and cost the lives of nearly 500,000 people. This war was devastating, and some may say unsuccessful in that there's not a lot to show for it after this war. And this war did kind of send a movement of pessimism about the U.S. power and where we stand in the world, that maybe we'll soon be overcome by someone such as China. Okay, and then we step into the Obama administration, and the foreign policy became much more relaxed than what we saw in the Iraq War. We avoided military occupation. Obama's words were, "Just because we have the best hammer does not mean that every problem is a nail." We saw how dramatic the Iraq War was, and so we stepped back and we kind of stopped getting so involved. The Trump administration only amplified this same mindset with the America First policy, which is basically saying we're only concerned with what's going on in our country. We're not going to risk the safety of our citizens for problems going on in other countries. And some authoritarian leaders such as Putin, Kim Jong-un, and Assad were all pleased at this thought. They didn't want the U.S. budging into their affairs. But this U.S. reluctance to lead and hold other nations accountable represents the waning of Pax Americana. This is not the same ideals that Pax Americana was started with. So now we see the unraveling in that the U.S. economic power is greatly at risk now that nations such as Japan, Canada, and Mexico are trying to exclude the U.S. from trade deals. They're trying to get their economy boosting without the U.S. involved. And so if the U.S. ever decided to renegotiate or retract former trade agreements, this could start a tariff war, which would be very dangerous. And as well as that, the US dollar is slowly moving away from being the primary trade currency. And when that happens, the US will lose their prime position in the global economy. And as well as the fading economic power in the United States, the fear of the U.S. military among other world powers is diminishing. The U.S. told the Syrian president if they used any chemical weapons, we would be coming for them. Of course, the president did use chemical weapons and received no repercussions. This kind of showed that America is not really following through. So, furthermore, this is just saying that the United States is losing their position as unchallenged power. There are many other opponents rising up, which really does lead to the threat of Pax Americana.